one of you present here. It's a lovely morning. First of all, I would like to thank you all for taking time of your heavy schedule and marking the spectacular morning with your glorious presence. Thank you very much. India has been one of the fastest growing aviation industry in the world during the last decade and is expected to overtake China and United States as the world's largest air passenger market by 2030. The aim of today's discussion is to share industry's pain points and help relieve stress from civil aviation sector. We are expecting the Honorable Minister any moment. Shri Manan Chauhan, Associate Director, Octus Advisors, Ms. Ashmita Sethi, President and Country Head, Pratt & Whitney, and Co-Chairperson, ASSOCHAM National Council on Aerospace and Defense. May I request Shri Deepak Sood to accord a plantation welcome to the Honorable Minister.
Yeah, start. Interaction. Yeah, because we're doing it with the different ministers.
May I invite Shri Deepak Sood, Secretary General ASSOCHAM, for the welcome address.
Morning, and I would say actually good afternoon. Thank you all of you for joining. It's a large crowd. I've never seen this kind of sitting in this room, so I'm quite happy to see a fresh layout, particularly in this room. Our Minister, Honorable Minister, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much. You know, the transition from speaking at a steel and a mineral session and suddenly talking about aluminium and planes and aviation is going to be quite a transition for you. We talk about energy transition. Here's a metal transition that is actually walking your way. It's on behalf of everybody who is from the aviation industry in this room. I extend a warm welcome to all the senior members of ASSOCHAM as well. We have Ajay, the Senior Vice President, with us. The importance of enablers which will help India to become a developed nation by 2047. The $5 trillion economy, and we're talking about going to the $40 trillion, $30 trillion someday, is very crucial. And aviation, not only moving of people, I think logistics and other aspects of it, including manufacturing, will play a very, very significant role in this piece. We all had been hit by the pandemic. I see a lot of people without masks today. I hope everybody is maintaining their COVID protocols, and I hope we don't get another one. But came the war, and we were hit by the commodities. And this sector, let me put it this way, was possibly the hardest hit. The high-touch industry has come out significantly from it, and they have shown growth. But this sector continues to be under stress. And therefore, Honorable Minister, and I keep talking to the industry as well, we need to expand, we need to add fleet, and companies are doing that. But most importantly, what is important is the health of all industry would be very crucial for us to be able to ensure that this growth that is coming our way, we are able to absorb that and then deliver to the country and the people of this country. Honorable Minister, you have always been very available. You have always helped through this period of transition from a very significant shutdown to opening up and running this. And we really thank you for all the guidance, time, engagements that you have done with us. It is an ongoing journey, and I'm sure we will seek your time whenever is required, and you're very easily available for us and help us. With these few words, Ajay, may I invite you for your comments on the section. Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you, sir, for this warm welcome. Okay.
You can speak loud. No, why not? Can you get this on? It's all right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much, Deepak. It's my great pleasure to welcome the Honorable Union Minister for Civil Aviation and Steel and Mines, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia. You know, I've been involved in this sector for many years now. And it's about 17 years now. And in my 17 years, I have yet to see a minister who is as engaged in the sector and as available and as aggressive in espousing the requirements of the sector as Mr. Scindia. We have spoken about this whole concept of taxes on fuel for the longest time. You know, ever since I remember 2005 when we started SpiceJet, we started saying that it's unfair to have such high taxes on fuel. The only minister who's ever done anything about it, I mean, everybody has said to us, this is very sad, it shouldn't happen. India shouldn't be the only country in the world that has such high taxes on fuel and then doesn't give input tax credit. But this is the only minister in my 17 years who's actually reached out to the states and got them to reduce the VAT. And today, I think 17 or 18 states have actually reduced VAT from their 25 or 30% to 0 to 5%. So a big round of applause for Mr. Scindia. I think he's done a fabulous job. He continues to engage with us on a daily basis. Of course, the challenges of the sector are well known to all of us. We had COVID, and then we had, of course, the dramatic rise in fuel price as a consequence of the Russian war on Ukraine. We are all struggling and trying to find solutions, but we could not find a better champion for this than Mr. Scindia, and he has been strongly espousing our case both within his ministry as well as the Ministry of Finance and the Government of India. I think the success of the regional connectivity scheme, the success of the Air India divestment, a lot of that is owed to Mr. Scindia. So dramatic changes being made in our sector. Fabulous sector, as we all know, fabulous possibilities, but incredible challenges at this time. And I'm sure you all want to ask him what he's doing about those challenges. So what I would request is that instead of getting the minister to make a keynote speech, we will make this an interactive session, and we will invite questions to the minister, and we will hear his response. With that, I'll just turn this over to the minister. Please, Deepak, would you like to coordinate the question-answer session?
So we have Manan. Why don't you?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
I think thanks everyone for wonderful morning welcome. I think the tone for the growth of the industry of which we all are part has been set rightly by the government, and we are talking about both aggressive and a secular growth. We're talking about 1,000 routes, 1,000 new routes in India itself, 100 new airports, and a holistic ecosystem to support all of that. Now, what we have done as part of the process, we've reached out to the industry stakeholders and collected a lot of points, and the list was on and going on and on. But what we've tried to do it is that we've tried to put it under certain themes. So the 4 themes that we are discussing today, one is how do we build the hubs? And I will not take, I think we're running short of time, so I will not take us through the presentation as such, but directly would like to go and invite comments from the industry on the points which we've collated together, and let it be an interactive session like we've spoken about on what can be done, on what should be done for India to grow at to a 4x or a 5x levels from where we are. So I think with that I'll directly jump to the first topic, which is development of international hubs. I'm not going through the slides as such. I think the potential is immense. We all understand it. The potential is both from D to I sector and I to I. I think for us to globally create a mark and have a position in the global aviation space, it's important that we capture eye-to-eye traffic also. So there are certain points which have come from the industry itself, which are flashed on the screen. I would love to call upon our friends from the industry to talk about it, and what are your thoughts in terms of what can be done to have a formidable hub. Yeah, sir.
Manan, I think what we should do is we should leave it open for people to ask questions.
That's
For the minister to perhaps make some opening comments, and then let people ask questions.
Sure.
Because I'm sure there are specific concerns beyond just what is in the presentation.
Sure.
So I think we should just invite minister to make quick opening comments, and then we'll
Absolutely, sir.
leave it open for interaction.
We'll do that.
Okay, I'm going to do it from here only, if that's all right for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, it's wonderful to be at this ASSOCHAM conference, and I must commend Ajay Singh ji and Deepak Sood ji for putting this together. I think forums like this really will be able to achieve what Prime Minister's very clear directive, objective and goal is, which is for government to play the role of a facilitator in order to be able to allow you to rise to your strengths. So it's a great occasion. I'd like to thank both Deepak and Ajay, as I mentioned, for putting this together. I see a lot of familiar faces across this room, many of whom with whom I've had the privilege of interacting through my 9 advisory groups that we have set up across the sector. I firmly believe that our role as a pilot ministry, no pun intended, is also to be able to facilitate each one of you grow to your innate strength. As I've mentioned before in my interactions with you, I firmly believe that now is the time to plant the full ecosystem of civil aviation very firmly on the soil. We are ones who are normally used to looking up at the skies, but I think it's important to be able to plant our feet in terms of the whole ecosystem. From a strategic perspective, every industry follows a evolution curve, which is an S-shaped growth curve. As I've mentioned before to some of you in our interactions, I firmly believe that the infancy stage, which is the flat part of the bottom half of the S, is something that the civil aviation sector has gone way beyond. We are now in the growth phase, which is the mid part of the S, before we achieve maturity stage, where the growth then again starts to flatten out. So I think here is the time for really us to be able to target our potential. I really believe that from an airline perspective, the growth opportunities are tremendous. As I've mentioned to you many times before, prior to COVID, we had about 144 million travelers in India. We are now closely competing with the Indian Railways in our segment of competition. And our segment of competition is limited to the air-conditioned segment, which means first AC and second AC. The railways today transport only limited to first AC and second AC 185 million passengers. The difference being that the CAGR between railways and civil aviation, railways is growing at 5.6%, CAGR in civil aviation is growing at 10.3%. So over the next 5 to 10 years, I look at us becoming really the bulwark of transportation for this limited section of air-conditioned travelers in India, 1. 2, we have attained pre-COVID levels of travelers per day, which the height was about 4.05 lakhs or so. We've attained that in April, in April, May of this year. We are now in the down season, in the lean season, which is this period post June up till September before holiday season picks up again. I firmly believe that our total number of travelers pre-COVID, which was 144 million domestic plus another 60 million international, totaling roughly about 200 million. We should be able to double that to about 400 million over the next 7 to 10 years. So that's the growth potential that we're talking about. From a fleet perspective, we've got one of the doyens of the industry sitting right next to me. We had a total fleet of roughly about 400 aircraft in 13-14. That's grown to roughly about 700 aircraft, and we are adding a delta of almost about 15% per annum. So that's the growth potential going up to about 1,000-1,200 fleet by another 5 years or so. In addition to that, if you look at the airport side, there's been a complete, total paradigm revolution. In 13-14, we had 74 airports in our country. In the last 8 years, we've added another 68. We've taken that 67. We've added, so that takes us to 141. And I look at inclusive of heliports and waterdromes going up to 220 by 2026. So that's the growth phenomena that you're going to see, and that growth is also going to come as opposed to what we're used to, the top 6 metros. I firmly believe that that growth is really going to come from the regional airports. And why I say that is that if you look at the metro growth rate, which between 2010 to 2015 was about 7.8%, that metro growth rate has pretty much stayed the same over the last 6 to 7 years, roughly about 8 to 9%. But if you look at the non-metro growth rate, that growth rate, which was 10.8% in 2010 to 2015, has today grown to almost 31%. So the future growth is going to come from the non-metros, and that's where regional airlines come in. That's where last mile connectivity comes in, whether it's helicopter connectivity, whether it's in the days to come, which is not so far in the distant future now, eVTOLs. That's where that last mile connectivity will come in with small aircrafts. And that's an area where we're trying to focus in with the small aircraft scheme that I launched almost about just 4 or 5 months ago, where we've looked at 3 versions. We've looked at on a seat basis, a VGF. We've looked on an aircraft basis, VGF, and then we've looked at a model specifically for smaller aircraft and waterplanes, a leasing cost basis as well. So putting the capital cost also into the VGF and therefore making it much more fungible in the days to come. So that's as far as airlines and airports are concerned, but I do believe that the more important footprints, if you will, are really going to be in the areas of FTOs, MROs, cargo, drone, and also environmental sustainability. And in all of these areas, we've put in place new policies. I don't want to wax eloquent on this because I'm sure it's going to come up a lot in the Q&A, but we put in place new policies that have taken away what I have believed policies that really didn't make economic sense from a growth perspective, by scrapping royalties, by scrapping, in the case of the heli policy, TNLC and RNFC charges, by making sure that rentals are much more attuned to the business model as opposed to really accretion of funds for any organization. And I think that the growth in these sectors now is going to lay out as this industry will need more pilots, as this industry will get more planes and therefore need more servicing of engines, as this industry across the board, much more economic development will augur for more cargo both within India and outside India. And I think that the growth triggers are in place now for us to really take a leap forward in the days to come. So with those very brief opening comments, I'd love to open it up for questions and answer any direct questions that you have with regard to our initiatives or what more can we do, both suggestions and questions. So I'd like to leave the forum open for discussion. Thank you.
So before, thank you very much.
One second, Deepak. We've also seen a new landmark event. After 20 years, we've seen for the first time in India which was used to the burial of airlines, now the birth of a new airline. And it's been a long time coming, but the entrance of Akasa Air really heralds in many ways a new dawn for the civil aviation industry. It's an occasion that we've been waiting for. We'll also hopefully see the rebirth of the erstwhile Jet Airways in its new avatar. And both events are very significant for us in fiscal 22, as we are on the one hand emerging out of the shadow of COVID, and I know you all have been through a very, very difficult time, and it's been my effort to stand with you through this difficult time, to plead your case, to make sure we get growth imperatives in place for you. But both of these, both the Akasa event and the future Jet event will be watershed events for us in the years to come in the area of civil aviation. Sorry, Deepak ji.
No problem. Thank you so much. Indeed, it was a good start. Obviously, we have just kind of revamped the format, so no problems. So what we're going to do is, there are 4 points that we had in the presentation, and all the minister alluded to those. One is...
Deepak ji, I'm sorry I've sort of put a spanner in the works, but I much more prefer this format.
No, I'm just going to go around the table now. So
No, I much more prefer this format because I believe that
we absolutely okay with that, sir. Thank you so much. We are absolutely okay.
I
So
know
let's-
he's not allowing me to have my say.
No, I would dare not. So may
So
I
let me finish my comment before you start off again. I really believe that ministers must participate in a dialogue and a consultation process. And that's one of the reasons why I set up these advisory committees, because I do not believe that the repository of all information necessarily lies with government or a particular line ministry. There are many ideas, and I must thank all of you. There are many wonderful ideas that have come from all of you during our deliberations, some on which we have acted and reported back to you, some on which, unfortunately, we've not been successful, but the work is still on. And I very much appreciate this iterative dialogue process, for which I'd like to thank you.
Wonderful. So, Maran, you may go ahead.
Yeah. So maybe we can go around the table, like make it as interactive as possible. Maybe we can start with the international hub, just to ignite this discussion and start the discussion, and then we can foray into all the aspects, especially the regional connectivity. The MRO friends are here, and there are a lot of discussion which is gone behind what we have put. So maybe, I don't know, anybody would want to start? Anand, maybe we can start with, sorry, but I'm
So let's go down and let's start with you, and
yeah, because
on the international hubs, and the mic is in front of you. You please start.
Sorry, Anand, maybe you can talk about MRO.
Okay, very well.
Yeah,
Sure.
because he's...
Good afternoon, Minister, for taking your time. On the MRO in Mumbai a few years back, and along with Ministry, we had worked on 2040 vision statement. The MRO vision was articulated very simply as a 3-legged stool. Basically, the 3 targets which were set up for ourselves was 100% of all the Indian carriers maintenance will be done in India. 2, we said that redelivery, 90% of the redelivery will be done in India. And 3rd, we said that whatever is the total MRO spend, 20% of that would be contributed by non-BT registered or foreign airlines. So these are the 3 basic, guidance posts, if we may say, for 2040 that we articulated for ourselves. I am very happy that the first one we have already achieved, and achieved almost with 20 years ahead of time, if I may say, which is 100% of the regular maintenance happening in the country. But what we are struggling right now, and which is what we have been discussing for some time, is the redelivery checks. Now, redelivery checks, we as Indian MRO have come a long way. We have demonstrated our capabilities of doing the redelivery checks in the country. And COVID that way has been blessing in disguise, because that forced many of my airline friends to try us out, and we succeeded well in that. But on duty structure, we still need to do, sir. And if we can designate redeliveries as a export-oriented business or a import substitution business, because in any case we are losing that business to foreign MROs, then the duty on the parts, especially on the engines and all, we'd be able to work that out and make it a very, the business case would be much stronger. And if we just look at the numbers, by 2040 we are talking about almost 2,500 aircrafts, and 5-year lease period means almost 300 to 400 aircrafts per year would be lease returns. That will be $1.3 to $1.5 billion of just the MRO spend on that. And I believe that we should try and capture it as fast as possible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Anand. Honorable Minister, may I take a few more on the MRO side before you want to respond?
Let me just respond.
Okay,
I think it's important to respect each individual's statement and respond to that. I think very, very quick responses. Anandji, you know that I've been in dialogue with yourself and your full industry body. We've got a full chart of issues which is not limited to just redelivery. It's got issues with Chapter 8802, 8803. I've become like a good student now, conversant with all the lingo of your industry and your issues. Duty on parts, the fact that under warranty when we send out engines and we bring them back, there is still GST on that. So I'm completely on top of things. It's as Ajay mentioned in his opening remarks, it's a continuous process that I am in dialogue with MOF on these issues. Some of these issues pertain to and I'm not talking about just MROs, but across our industry, pertain to the GST Council, which needs a certain process to be followed before it can be consummated. And even within the GST Council, we have different views. Some of it pertain to the central government alone. And not only your issues, but also issues with regard to helicopters and other issues. It's very much on my anvil, and it's something that I'm pursuing. There have been some early successes that we've been able to garner, some of which Ajay talked about, and some issues are still WIP. All I can say to you is that I'm committed to your cause, and I will fight your good fight to make sure that we become a competitive sector for MROs in the days to come. What is very heartening is, of course, Safran's announcement of a huge investment of $150 million into India. They have also said that they will be servicing close to about 1,000 engines in the next 4 to 5 years from India, which means what? Which means that India is not going to become a servicing center only for our fleet domestically, but also international engines will be serviced here. And then we have the likes of Pratt & Whitney sitting on my stage, who I've been imploring for the last 1 year to start their facilities in India. But unfortunately, they sometimes are too bureaucratic in terms of putting their best foot forward. But I'm sure that with your question also, we will get some early engagement from Pratt & Whitney to come into India, and the likes of Pratt & Whitney as well, so that we can give a new impetus to our sector in India. Thank you very much.
Next time we don't put them on the stage unless they put a plant.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So may I get Mr. Ashok Gopinath to add on to? Yeah.
Honorable Minister, for this opportunity. I just want to add what from my colleague Anand has
Ashokji, can you just give me a little quick 5 seconds in terms of
Yes,
the industry you represent? And
I'm Ashok Gopinath.
No,
I head
the company.
GMR MRO.
GMR, okay.
Hyderabad. So I just want to add to the point.
Can you just bring the mic closer to you? Yeah.
To the point that my colleague Anand has mentioned, one more additional point was that this has been spoken in the earlier forum also. Currently, we are largely sufficient in terms of airframe MRO point of view, but where we lack today is basically the component of the engine. And I see some lights coming up on the engine also, but when it comes to components, we are still lacking. I would only request, if it's a request to the MOCA and to yourself, we can facilitate a meeting with Tier 1 MRO component OEMs to facilitate a meeting between the industry stakeholders and the OEM, because there are some apprehensions. And this is not about the money or any funding from the government, but it's more like a facilitator. If government can take, MOCA can take the initiative to organize this so that we understand what is their apprehension in supporting the industry here in India to set up component MRO business, and that's where we need to catch up a lot. And the second point
Whose
is
hesitancy in setting up the unit?
see, there's a lot of hesitation from the OEMs, component OEM, in setting up MROs in India. So that is something which I would request if government can facilitate that meeting.
Sure.
I have requested this in the earlier meeting also. If it's just a meeting to understand what is their issue, if there's anything that government or industry stakeholders can do to mitigate those concerns, it will help a long
Sure.
way, because we as an MRO, JMR MRO, are on our own, we are talking to a couple of stakeholders, OEMs, to do on our way, but it should be done in a larger landscape for a national cause. Number 2 point is about the offset that are available, which should also be used for the civil MRO point of view. Sir. That is somehow has been a bit of a debate issue. We need clarity on that, so that if that MRO offset is available, can be enabler for setting up civil MRO business to support the commercial aviation growth in the country.
So I'm going to take the second point that you made, and this is something that the OEMs have brought up, the whole issue of, I don't want to talk about limited issue, Ashokji, of just the offsets, but really more convergence between civil and defense.
Yes.
Okay? Internationally, these two industries are pretty much analogous, and the offshoots of one very directly affect the other. And therefore, I think within India, we also need to work on making sure that we have a greater degree of convergence between civil and military, not only with regard to offset, but across the board on multiple issues. This is something that we have started our conversations with the MOD, and I'm fairly confident that we'll get some traction in the days to come.
Thank you. Yeah, I was about to invite you.
Yeah, if I was not, if I was sitting there, I would have also added a few things, but the Honorable Minister has already answered, a couple of questions on convergence of civil and defense and the MRO aspect on GST taxes. But what I wanted to bring in here, I wanted to make a distinction between an engine MRO and an aircraft MRO, which is kind of important to understand because of the technology involved and the special certifications involved in making that happen. We have a training center as Pratt & Whitney in Hyderabad, which is DGCA and EASA not only recognized but certified and monitored on an annual basis. So similarly in the MRO sector, the MRO facility has to be DGCA, FAA, EASA certified, and the engineers and technicians cannot touch a wrench to an engine part unless they are trained and skilled and certified and qualified. More than 65% of the total maintenance expenditure for an airline actually resides in the engines. And developing an engine overhaul shop requires capital investment in land, facility, equipment, tooling, and even these MRO shops can actually grow into test beds for developing new engines, etc., and new configurations that come in with the engines. So it's really I would say a super industry, correlated with manufacturing and the vision what Modi ji is looking at and yourself are looking at as a champion of his government. So I would, just stress that how important it is that those couple of impediments like the GST taxes which affect imports of engine parts, which continue to attract 18 to 28% GST. In the notifications, as you said, you become a subject matter expert on it, and so have I, and I understand the legalities of that notification. The Chapter 88 has not been included in the list of chapters, which clearly focuses on engine parts, specific engine parts that need to come in.
On that, if I'm not mistaken, Ashimaji, I'll revert to you after this meeting, but on that, I actually asked for a clarification from MOF, and they have issued that clarification. I'll make sure, if I'm not incorrect, but I'll make sure that that clarification also reaches you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did send a paper. And,
Yes,
you
I
know,
raised it more. I'll come
yeah,
back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Please
Ashwata.
remind me after this meeting.
I
I'll
will.
come.
I will.
Anybody wants to add anything with respect to an MRO operation? Please speak your name out and your question quickly,
Yeah, and,
please.
yeah,
There's a mic
and-
on your right.
And Ajay also just reminded me, we had a very extensive meeting with MOF, and we've actually sent a list of parts that actually go into the
classified
aircraft.
as
which-
aviation parts.
Yeah, to be classified as aviation parts.
And the subheadings are also provided in that paper, which I.
No, there's
Correct.
a letter already which
Correct.
has gone from the Ministry of Civil Aviation. We need to follow it up with the MOF, I think.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Honorable Minister.
Can you just raise your, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Naveen from Epsilon Aerospace. We are into component MRO, small and medium size. I echo the words of my mentor, Ashok ji, what he has mentioned just about the OEMs. Just to give you a little bit numbers perspective, perhaps, it might be helpful. We estimate in about a lifespan of an aircraft for the lease in India on a narrow body, there's an expenditure of about almost $500,000 foreign exchange that is going out of the country. So just like in China, where the OEMs have set up a facility locally over there to manufacture PMA parts. Again, to just give you a small number, the PMA parts is a big business in China today, amounting to about almost $2 billion annually. And we are nowhere in India at this moment. So it is important for OEMs to set up authorized centers in India to support the component MRO systems as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to respond to you, I'm not an expert in this industry, but the little time that I've spent over the last 14 months, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, right? Do you have the numbers domestically to support me in terms of servicing for me to set up something? On the other hand is the other argument that you've put. But I think now the growth numbers that we're talking about, when I talk about a fleet size of 700, when I talk about an acquisition of almost 15% per annum going forward, I think those numbers are starting to make sense to the OEMs, number one. Number two, our geographical location is extremely attractive in terms of not only servicing aircraft in India, but around our geography, right? Which is today happening in Singapore, it's happening in the Middle East, it's happening everywhere else. 2,500 crore industry, out of which 85% is being done abroad. Only 15% is being done in India. So I think all those paradigms will change, and that's why I started my comments to you by talking about the S-shaped curve of evolution of an industry. And we are off the kink of the bottom half of the S, and we are into the middle kink. And that's why I then talked about the footprint of the ecosystem coming in place. And very much like the auto system, auto industry, without the ancillaries, there is no OEM. Similarly here, now you're going to get these footprints in place now, because we are now coming to scale.
So I think the MRO guys have asked quite a few questions.
Yeah. So
How about we let the airports and the airlines ask some questions as well?
Yeah, so I'm going to the international hubs in the airlines. So,
Campbell, would you like to ask something?
Thank you very much, AJ. Having been in the country only 2 months, it's probably impolite for me to make any substantive comments, but I have read the document here, and I think the issues that have been identified for the hub growth are absolutely spot on. If we can make progress on those and deliver on, I think, the 5 or 6 objectives that are outlined in that, really the world's opportunity is through India.
thank you, Campbell.
So let me just engage with Campbell on his initial comments. First of all, welcome to India and welcome to a wonderful responsibility. I welcomed you in private, and now I'm welcoming you in public. You're an extremely important stakeholder in the success of this sector, not only as an airline, but really as an ecosystem. And we have great aspirations and hopes from you. I think, again, going back to the comment that I made to the gentleman at the back, I think the time has come now to really concentrate on looking at locating India as an international hub, as opposed to our international hub being in our neighborhood countries. Again, this has suffered from a chicken and egg problem. please also remember that I don't wear a hat of Minister of Airlines, or I am not the Minister of Airports, or I am not the Minister of MROs, but I am the Minister of Civil Aviation. And therefore, my fiduciary responsibility, as important as it is to each one of you here in your various segments of civil aviation, is also to the ultimate consumer. And I have to provide the best possible means of ingress and egress into and out of my country for every passenger globally. That's my primary responsibility. And the fact is that until today, when airlines are thinking of international expansion, and this is something that I've been pushing through my advisory group to gentlemen such as Ajay and Rahul Bhatia ji, and also to Campbell Wilson's predecessors in Air India, we need to think big. And I understand the fact is that if you think domestic, your volatility from a risk point of view is much lower. On long haul, your volatility is much higher. Your capex in terms of a long haul plane is much greater than a domestic circuit plane. From every point of view, in terms of your capacity utilization, is also a risk element involved. But we need to be able to think beyond the Rubicon now. And it's only when we get greater number of wide-bodied aircraft in our fleet that you're actually going to start locating one of India's airports as an international hub. Today, the only long-haul carriers are in India today, mainly Air India and Vistara. We need to move beyond that. And therefore, can we do this conversation later? And therefore, we need to ensure that more of our carriers get wide-bodied aircraft. Point-to-point transport is what will really accrue value to each one of our airlines. And let me tell you very honestly, the way I'm seeing market dynamics evolve, even though sometimes point-to-point travel may entail a larger capital cost in terms of a ticket, travelers prefer going point-to-point rather than going through 2 or 3 other locations to reach their ultimate destination, even at a lower cost. And our geographical advantage is there. So number one, we need to get more wide-bodied aircraft if we want to really see that dream of an international hub turning into reality. Number two, we need to make sure that our airports have key anchor airlines in place on a particular airport basis. So whether it's Air India taking being the anchor customer in a particular airport, or Indigo or SpiceJet being an anchor customer in a particular airport. That's the second. Third, we need to provide ease of connectivity between international to domestic. And therefore, your domestic traveler landing into your metro airport to take an international flight, that ease of connectivity needs to be there even within that airport segment. Right now, in many airports, from domestic, you've got to get out, take a taxi, and then go to the international terminal. So we need to be able to provide that ease of connectivity. Fourth, slot banks have to be rescheduled at each one of the metro airports so as to be able to provide that. Incoming versus outgoing. Incoming from regional, outgoing to international. Incoming from international, outgoing into regional. So all of that configuration has to change. And today my ministry is working with airlines, specifically 1 or 2 airlines and 1 or 2 airports, to really look at creating that international hub. We've also engaged a consultant to be able to look at what are those levers that we need to look at to make sure that we're able to create at least 1 international hub in India. So all of those pieces of the puzzle have to fit together. It's not so easy as just to put on a PowerPoint presentation, we need to create an international hub. If it were easy as that, it would have been done eons ago. So this certainly is a consultant's dream, but it's a dream that has to be turned into reality by our players here, along with the ministry. And so it's not a strategic consultant enterprise, but it's really an operations and logistics nightmare that has to be turned into a dream. And that's what we are working on in terms of setting the steps together to make that possible. It's my passion as much as it is your passion. And we have to make that a reality, because we cannot have the situation where our international passengers are today someone else's passengers, or our domestic passengers coming in on international flights are someone else's passengers. Because the growth dynamics are here now. And it's time we looked at that as an enterprise between industry and the ministry together.
I see quite a few hands. I'll just, if I can have you, Satyaki, briefly, you could comment.
Thank you, sir. This is Satyaki Raghunath from Bangalore International Airport.
Bye.
I think you...
Congratulations on your expansion.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Thank you. I think you touched on most of the points that I was going to make from an international hub perspective. And I think
so I'm interrupting you, Satyarthi ji, right?
Satyaki, sir.
Satyaki. But here's another success story in India. Even our metro airports. Just look how far we have come. Today, Delhi is at close at 70 million passenger throughput, going to go to 100 million by end of this year. You're getting a new airport in Jewar. 12 million in phase 1, 70 million in the final phase. So that means Delhi and its neighborhood alone is going to be able to have the capacity to service 170 million passengers. 100 million passengers at Dial alone is probably the capacity of Chicago or New York or the top international airports. Move to Bombay. You've got 60 million capacity at Mile today. You've got Navi Mumbai coming up with another 60 million capacity in the final phase, 60 to 70 million capacity in the final phase. So you're going to have 120 million capacity in Mumbai alone between the two airports. You talk about Chennai and Hyderabad, today 25 million, growing close to about 35 million by December 23 each. So another 70 million there each. When you could talk about Bangalore, today at about 35 million, going to grow to about 55 to 60 million. And the same story in Chennai, at 35 million going to grow to about 52 million. So your 221 million capacity as on date is going to almost double to 446 million in the next 5 to 7 years. So you're going to have huge metro expansion, you're going to have huge non-metro expansion, you're going to have airline expansion, and so therefore all those levers are in place to do what Deepak ji and Wilson ji have said of creating that international hub in India. Sorry.
So, sir, I think you touched on most of the points that were on my list, but I think one key aspect as we invest in this capacity, as you clearly pointed out, we're all investing in capacity. It's all going to come online over the course of the next few years. The airlines are starting to increase their fleet acquisition and things like that. But one place where we really need government support is sort of the interaction between the different ministries in terms of getting the right staff augmentation in place for things like ATCOs, for immigration and for security and segments like that. Because for all the investment in capacity that we do, if we can't really operate them at the efficient levels that we're supposed to be operating them at, it would be sort of an exercise in futility. So I think from our perspective, if you can and the ministry can sort of work to help us augment those staff capacities, I think that would go a long way in sort of making sure that we establish that international, or multiple international hubs here in India.
You're dead on. So let me just say that you're dead on, and I don't agree with you 100%, I agree with you 400%, okay? So let me tell you what we're doing now. This is something that I've been working on over the last 6 to 8 months. We've just given approval for an additional 370 ATCOs to be hired, which was the pendency, vacancy, you may call it, or the requirement. Those should be done, I believe, by December of this year. We are looking at an additional 470 ATCOs, which I'm trying to get permission from MOF to augment our capacity, keeping in mind these numbers that I've talked to you about, which you rightfully brought back to me and said, great, we're putting this capacity in, now facilitate us. It's not a reasonable demand, but it's your rightful demand. So we're going to do that. So we're going to get those 450 ATCOs approval also done to be able to look at capacity, not only at places such as Bangalore or the 6 metros, but even the regional airports. Because if you're going to grow from 74 to 141 to 220, you need ATCO capacity to make that functional. Otherwise, you're talking about white elephants, right? So we're on track on doing that. Please bring it up in the next Airport Advisory Committee, and I will do a full presentation to you. And this is another point that I want to make to all my stakeholders here, that it's not that you're accountable to me. I'm as accountable to you. And I've tried to do that through our meetings. And I'm more than happy to present to you so as to satisfy you, or if it's not satisfactory, then work even harder at it to make sure that we're able to do that. On immigration, our talks are on with MHA. But this, as you are well aware, is on an airport-specific basis. It's not across the board. So where we require greater customs immigration capabilities because capacity is being expanded, that's a no-brainer. We need to have that in place. So we're working on it currently. Please give me your demand. I'll certainly add that to the list and take it up with MHA. The third point that you raised very clearly is with regard to security. And what we're doing to augment security is that we have 3 levels of security. We have the airport security, which is handled by CISF at 65 major airports. We then have the second level of security, which is engaged by BCAS or others at the other airports. And the new reform that we brought in place is to also allow private security to come in. And as today, the strength of that private security is almost 700 people, but we want to enable that to grow in the days to come as well. But all 3 excellent pointers. If my answer is satisfactory to you, great. If it's not and you need more work done by me, please bring it to me. I'm more than happy to work on that additionalities for you.
Thank you. May I request Ragini if she has any comment? And then I'm coming to you, sir.
Thank you. My comment would have been a lot of what the Honorable Minister has already articulated on his international hubs thing. So we're very grateful for that thinking, sir. And I think your openness in accepting all these advisory committee suggestions has gone down very well. So we know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Gentleman back
Rajesh.
Take the gentleman back there.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
The gentleman in the pink shirt, yeah.
Can we get the mic to him, please?
आप बैठ के पूछिए ना आराम से बैठ के आप मेरे लिए विजिबल हो विजिबिलिटी महत्वपूर्ण नहीं है आपकी आवाज़ महत्वपूर्ण है
जब आप सर हंगरी में थे मैं पोलैंड में था सर and there is an airport called Shushow in eastern Poland from which 9,000 Indian students were evacuated between March 1st and 9th. In the last 3 months, I've been on more than 15 international flights, including a lot on lot. And the airports that have been a total disaster are Heathrow, Amsterdam, Frankfurt. So my suggestion to you, sir, is that, and since we have all the captains of industry here, that we start looking at bilaterals at places like Poland, Hungary, and other such places. Because, for example, now my preferred airport in the world is Warsaw. And the reason it's Warsaw is because I get out, take my luggage cart, walk across, and stay in a hotel. So I think, and flying lot, all the planes have been chock-a-block full, and they are now feeding all of Europe. So I think you talk about the ecosystem. I think we have to expand and build our own India-based ecosystem with bilaterals, primarily, and I choose Poland because my son-in-law is Polish, but we could use Hungary, we could use other countries in Europe, and let's forget about Frankfurt, let's forget about Heathrow, let's forget about Schiphol. Let's build a totally India-centric system working with bilaterals and the airlines in those countries. So that's my suggestion.
So let me respond to that very quickly. I completely echo your sentiments, and as you are aware, we have an open sky policy with most of our countries which are beyond 5,000 kilometers. So I'm actually waiting for our Indian carriers to push the pedal to the metal and get in the sky. A lot of the diplomats from these countries have come and met me, and I'm more than happy to increase those bilaterals. But you're looking, let me add to your comment, you're looking westwards. I'm also looking eastwards to Africa, for example, right? And we can use Africa also as a huge base for our Indian carriers to take on from there onwards as well. So we must look westwards and eastwards because we are so conveniently located. And I completely agree with your comment.
I might just add one thing, sir. The lot aircraft are 7878s. They're all brand new and they are in fantastic condition. So, I mean, I think that is something that we have to aspire as a country, that the quality of the equipment should just be totally world class.
I think our equipment, in the defense of our airlines, let me just say that I think our equipment is world class. If you look at the age of our aircraft compared to a lot of the international fleets, the age of our aircraft is much lower than international fleet aircrafts. I mean, I stand to be corrected, but that's my estimation. Yeah.
So, with your permission, sir, may I take a few more questions? Let me cover all sections. May I quickly get Mr. Khanna from Blue Dot? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Honorable Minister and distinguished guests, I want to totally digress from what has been being discussed so far, and I want to talk about growth of the air cargo industry. So, I'll take exactly 2 minutes to speak about it. One of the things that we've been looking for is the cost that goes into air cargo. Everyone wants to reduce the cost. So where do we look at? We look at technology. So what part of technology are we talking about? So I really wish to bring to your attention, Honorable Minister, about unmanned aerial vehicles. And when I speak about unmanned aerial vehicles, I'm talking about capacity of revenue payloads of 3.8 tons going out to 160 tons being flown pilotless. I don't want to put pilots out of the job. I myself am a pilot. So that is something that I would request Honorable Minister to look at. This is totally separate from drones, and I'm sure we already have a division or a group which is looking into these aspects. But I believe that this will really bring down the cost to as much as 50% in cargo industry, air cargo, and it will result, without adding anything to the infrastructure, it will add capacity in times to come. We expect, whatever knowledge I have a little bit, we expect customer deliveries to happen of a smaller aircraft of about 3.8 tons by 2025 and 60 tons by 2027, which is not really very far. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me say this, both UAVs and eVTOLs, I think are on the cusp of reality in our lives in the days to come. I think India has leapfrogged in many ways the regulatory structure of putting in place a system initially for drones, but it will extend to UAVs and eVTOLs as well. The fact that we've come out with a drone policy, we've come out with an airspace map which highlights red, yellow and green areas. Red areas are very limited to almost only about 8 or 9% of India's airspace compared to other countries. And I think that the platform and the environment is ready to accept and allow and proliferate this sort of mode of transport as well. I think that a lot of it is technology in the making. As far as eVTOLs are concerned, EASA and FAA are putting the vehicles through trial in the US and in Europe as we speak. As far as UAVs are concerned, I'm more than happy to pursue that with you.
Thank you. Mr. Jain, may I come to you, please?
Thank you very much. In fact, all the points about hub are already well covered and well articulated. But for airport side, I will just highlight 3 points. One, whatever GST is being paid on inputs, we are not getting credit. So ultimately it is a burden on passenger because it adds to the cost, capital cost, and passenger pays for it. So there, I think as all other industries, input credit on whatever goes in construction should be available to airport. Second, National Civil Aviation Policy very clearly says that all airports should be having multimodal connectivity. So we are working on that, metro connectivity everywhere it is there. We are working on that. But in the meantime, it has become a general practice by state governments to put entire cost on the airport. So again, it is passenger who is paying for even connectivity, though it will be used not only by passengers, but all other stakeholders and general public also. So if state governments could provide this connectivity, that will be really. And the last point about hub, as rightly said, that entire slot might have to be rejigged because slots at congested airports are already allotted. And if we try to make hubs, then timings, slots, those things have to be relooked.
Thank you. Vipinji, yours.
Sir.
He always has to have the last word.
The cargo. Cargo always.
Not cargo, you.
So basically, there are two issues as far as cargo things are concerned. One is the bilateral, which we have with other countries. Now, as far as India is concerned, any cargo agent or freight forwarder who's coming into India, he just have to, make 1 lakh rupees capital and open his own office. When we want to go abroad, we want to go and open office in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or China, we have got a lot of restrictions. In Bangladesh, they don't allow more than 40% to a foreign company, Indian company to open their office in freight forwarding. Plus, they have a minimum restriction of you bring $60,000 capital plus $100,000 bank guarantee, which is non-refundable. Now, what my suggestion is, if these are the restrictions imposed by other countries, India should also have a bilateral, they should also be treated the same way. Like they are treating us, when we go to Middle East or other, countries, even in China. Now, all these multinationals, they're opening their offices in India, and we can't go overseas because of these restrictions. That's one thing. Now, the second thing is, of course, my old subject of AFS, when we are going to see the, day for the AFS to start in India, which is the air freight station.
AFS.
Which is now 8 years old policy of civil aviation, sir.
Okay, so you've raised two issues. One is the non-market stroke non-tariff barriers, and the other is the AFS. As you're aware, in multiple interactions with me, the latter point is something that we're working at. It's more than, let me say this, more than from a regulatory standpoint, it's more of a intra-industry issue that you all are facing. The fact that there are different voices within your own industry, and I'm trying to make sure that those voices from a cacophony become a symphony. I want to bring you all onto the same platform, and it's my endeavor to be able to do that. So that's still something that our department is working on. As far as the non-tariff barriers are concerned, I do recall you bringing that up with me. I also think that our cargo advisory committee meeting is pending now. So let me schedule that in the next week or 2 weeks, and then let's try and take up issues within that, and therefore we are able to revert to you with the progress made on that. So last question.
Yeah, okay. Anybody who is not been
May I say something, sir? Okay, sir. Good afternoon, sir. This is Group Captain Bali from Business Aircraft Operator Association. I'm here, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, firstly, want to thank you about the fraction ownership of the NSOP category. We had given you presentation in Feb, and I want to tell you, sir, that last week I was in the ministry, and the whole thing is on track. You've given the PTC 31st August, and the final paper is ready to be shared with the other two ministries. Sir. And thank you very much for you and the team over there, sir. Sir, some of the issues which are getting stuck in the advisory committee which you formed are on specific issues like aerial work issues where FATA is being treated at par with air transport operation, which is special operations, and also the ultra long range jets coming into India, sir. I am requesting we can form a joint working group where the regulator is involved We are in nowhere trying to alter their role as a regulator, but we are going to enrich their knowledge or information from our side so that they can take a better decision. So this is my request that we form some, with domain expert, joint working group as a subgroup of the advisory group who can advise the advisory group on to go way forward on that.
Sure. Just put together a short note for me and I'll certainly revert to you with a decision.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I'm really, really sorry. He had given me a deadline. He's crossed that much beyond that. I'm from a shy crowd to a good crowd, and now a crowd which is very interactive and wants more and more questions. May I now request Ashmita to do the closing remarks and close the session, please.
So we did not touch upon regional connectivity, and so I think I'll just quickly, talk about success stories as you talked about regional connectivity, building strong, affordable regional aviation system in India, as PM Modi has said, and revolutionizing the civil aviation from an elitist mode of transportation to one where even one person who wears a Hawaii chappal can travel by a Hawaii jahaz. And I would, use this opportunity. You mentioned a couple of things, that the last mile connectivity is going to come and growth will come in regional aviation. So, huge kudos to the government and MOCA for its success. I still feel there's a lot of huge untapped potential for regional aviation. And on that, a couple of comments here. At Pratt & Whitney, of course, we power 95% of the regional aviation aircraft flying today in India. So we are very proud to be part of that story. Whether it's ATRs or it's Q400s or the Twin Otter seaplanes, we are ensuring that there is world-class dispatch reliability provided by our engines and making sure that the skill sets of the operators are increasing by the knowledge transfer that we are giving to them. Understanding the nuances of regional aircraft, turboprops, and regional jets is, I think, the first and foremost a matter of understanding how this geography, can be supported by the government. And there are other governments that are playing a vital role in this by including key societal missions into regional connectivity, which includes disaster management, search and rescue, and those kind of things. So I'm going to finish with that because you have, we've crossed our time, but thank you so much for raising all the points for the industry, even before they could ask you those questions. I would say we would all give you 90%. Is that a fair score? The minister was already aware of 90%, so big applause. And we hope the timing of resolving the 10% issues, that will be of utmost importance in ensuring the success of our aviation industry. Thank you.
We just will quickly give you a memento. Ajay, please do the honors. Just take this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a DRDO stall as you walk out. Just go past us.
We thank all the speakers and the delegates and the sponsors of this roundtable. On behalf of ASSOCHAM, may I invite you all for lunch. Wish you all a pleasant day. Thank you.
इक्कीसवीं सदी भारत की हो, इसका मार्ग क्या होगा?